Alright, let us have first our objectives. So at the end of the chapter, the student should be able to explain the essence of OBE and OBTL, compare understanding by design, OBE and OBTL, and explain the meaning of constructive alignment in the context of the instructional cycle. Okay, so the Commission on Higher Education Memorandum Order Number 46, Series of 2012, mandates outcome-based education or OBE standards for higher education institutions. They enhance basic education curriculum, more popularly called the K-12 curriculum of the Department of Education. They introduce content standards or performance standards and competences in the K-12 curriculum guide. So first, let me give you a short overview of curricular reforms in teachers' education. Since we are preparing to be an educator, so we should know and understand the curricular reforms. We have the outcome-based education or the OBA. What does it mean about? Are you familiar with the OBA? It has actually became the fundamental philosophy of higher education in the Philippines lately. All curricular, including that of teachers' education, will be anchored in the concept of OBE in terms of course designing, instructional planning, teaching, and assessing students' learning.
Good day, everyone. I am Kenrichi Laska, and today I am going to discuss what is outcome based learning and the types of outcomes. Outcome based education is education in which an emphasis is placed on a clearly articulated idea of what students are expected to know and be able to do. That is, what skills and knowledge they need to have when they leave the school system. So, outcome based education focuses classroom instruction on the skills and competences that students must demonstrate when they exceed. Outcome-based education is education based on producing particular educational outcomes that focuses on what students can actually do after they are taught and expect all learners to successfully achieve particular level of knowledge and abilities. And one of the most profound benefits of outcomes-based education is the sense of clarity it fosters. Here are the two types of outcomes. We have immediate outcome and deferred outcome. So what is immediate outcome? Immediate outcomes are competences or skills upon completion of a lesson, a subject, a grade or year, a course, or a program itself. Immediate outcomes is a change that is expected to occur once one or more outputs have been provided or delivered by the implementer. In terms of time frame and level, these are a short-term outcomes and are usually changes in capacity, such as an increase in knowledge, awareness, skills or abilities, or access to among intermediaries and beneficiaries. The example for this is ability to communicate in writing and speaking, mathematical problem solving skills, skill in identifying objects by using different senses, skill in storytelling, graduation from a program, passing a required licensure exam, initial job placement. So, what is deferred outcomes? Deferred outcomes refer to the ability to apply cognitive, psychomotor, and affective skills or competences in the various aspects of a professional and workplace practice. Deferred outcomes is a process of developing individual or learners from learning until you achieve the deferred outcome that you aim for. That is why deferred outcome would take us a long years to observe these outcomes. For example, success in professional practice or occupation, promotion in the job, success in career planning, health and wellness, awards and recognition. So again, when we say immediate outcome, the outcome happens immediately. And when we say the deferred outcome, it would take a long years for us to observe that outcome. Outcome-based education. Dr. William Spade, an academic educational psychologist, sociologist, and is considered the father of outcome-based education. Outcome-based education was propounded by William Spade in the 90s to bring the focus of formal education to what the students learn rather than what they were taught. Outcome-based education is a system of education giving priority to ends purpose, accomplishments, and results. Dr. Williams Bede is largely noted for his works that attempt to expand and enhance the philosophical grounding and performance of educators, leaders, educational systems, and learners. Yes, that's all about my report, and I hope you learned something. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am the next reporter, Marian P. Sebel. And now we will learning about Spade's version for OBE. Spade's version is concerned with long-term cross-curricular outcomes that are related directly to students' future life goals such as being a productive worker or a responsible citizen or a parent. For Spade, the outcomes he refers to are the different outcomes cited by Navarro. So according to Spade, outcome-based education is clearly focusing and analyzing everything in the educational system around the essential for all the students to do successfully at the end of their learning experiences. So this definition clearly identifies the desired learning outcomes. Learning outcomes are made up of knowledge, skills, and attitudes that students should develop in school to make them reach their full potential and live a fulfilling lives as an individual in the community and at work. So to define and clarify further, we have here a guide question that teachers should address in order to fully understand what outcome-based education is. And number one is, what do we want these students to learn? So these are the bases to achieve the desired learning outcome. So before teacher come into the class, they already have an end in mind. Like he has already an objective of the lessons on what his learner will be learning right after the class. And number two is, why do we want students to learn these things? So teacher must understand the purpose of learning and should share it with their students. As a result, the learners will be more engaged in class discussion and have a better understanding, possibly because they can see how the learnings relate to their future goals. For example, we are reporting, right? We just not feed you with information, but we help you to know the purpose of this reporting, and that is to give you insights or knowledge that can help you or that can help us in the future, and that is to become an effective teacher. Next is, how can we best help students to learn these things? So teacher must know how to teach their students so that they can learn. So teachers should spend time getting to know their students, such as what they want, what they like, their strengths, their weaknesses, because teachers who understand their learners and how they learn can guide and lead them to grow in their learnings. Lastly, how will you know when the students have learned? So in order for you to know if your learners learn from you, is you conduct an examination or assessment. Assessment is very important here because teacher must gain access to their students' learnings and knowledge in order for us to know if the teaching strategy that we use is effective, and also to know what things we need to improve in order for our learners to learn effectively. Next, in addition to the idea that outcomes should describe long-term significant learning, OBE is underpinned by three basic premises. Number one is, all students can learn and succeed, but not all in the same time or in the same way. So as we all know, in school they are diverse learning. It means kanang students who have differences in learning, like different intelligence. There are students who are fast learners as well as slow learners. So different abilities must be acknowledged by the teacher. Teachers should use various strategy in teaching so that these differences will be catered by the teacher. Next, number two, successful learning promotes even more successful learning. When students achieve success, it strengthens their understanding, boosts their confidence, and motivates them to take new learning challenges. Lastly, schools and teachers control the condition that determine whether or not students are successful at school learning. So student learning is influenced most directly by the classroom and school condition, as well as individuals' teacher preferences and motivation. It means that the schools and teacher has a great responsibility in controlling and monitoring the student success.
So good day everyone, I'm your reporter for today's discussion. I'm going to discuss to you the 4 principles of OBE. So the 4 principles of OBE is the clarity of focus, designing back, high expectation, and expanded opportunities. So now let's go first, the clarity of focus. Clarity of focus, it's all about the outcomes. Outcomes, it means the culminating exit outcomes, as the focus of the student know if what they are aiming for. So that is what we call the clarity of focus. So and now let's go to designing back. So designing back is the curriculum background by the using of the major outcomes as the focus of the linking and aligning all the planning, teaching and assessment decision and directly to this outcome. It means of this it focus of the instruction. That was we call the designing back. So in third one is the high expectation. It's all about the success. Yes, it succeeds. So it means we expect the student to be succeed by the providing them encouragement to engage deeply with the issues they are learning and achieving the high challenging standard sets. So that is what we call the high expectations. So and now the last one is the expanded opportunities. In expanded opportunities, it means we cater to individual needs. We cater to individual needs and differences. For examples, expansion of the available time and resources so that all the students succeed in reaching the exit outcomes. So that is what we call the expanded opportunities. So and now let's go to the outcome based teaching and learning, or what we call is OBTL and big versions. So Biggs and Tangs in 2007. So this make us of the terms outcome based in teaching and learning, which is the essence in OBE applied in teaching and learning process. So this all define the outcomes as a learning outcomes, which are the most specific and then institutional outcomes, program outcomes, and course outcomes. In big tongues, OBTL outcomes are the statement of what we expect the student to demonstrate after we are having taught. These are referred to as a learning outcomes. So that was we call the outcome-based teaching and learning. So now let's take a look the figure 3. This is the outcomes in different levels. So according to the Big and Fangs made a mention of different levels of outcomes. So here are the institutional outcomes, the program outcomes, and the course outcomes. As we can see, take note of this, the most broad are the institutional outcomes, and the most specific outcomes start with institutional outcomes and followed by the program outcomes, course outcomes, and the learning outcomes. And now, from the institutional outcomes are drawn the graduate attributes that graduates of the institutions are expected to demonstrate after the graduation. And other claims that the graduates attributes are likewise drawn from the program outcomes, and the program outcomes are expected that the graduates of programs are expected to demonstrate at the end of the programs. Course outcomes are particular subject outcomes, while the learning outcomes are the most specific outcomes that the teacher is concerned with in his or her specific lessons. So that is the outcomes in different levels.
Is everybody are still listening? Alright, can you give me a thumbs up if you're with us? Oh, that's great. So allow me to continue our next discussion. We will talk about constructive alignment. Please let us read the presentation together. Constructive alignment, a design for teaching in which what is intended students should learn and how they should express their learning is clearly stated before teaching takes place. So what is it all about? A constructive alignment is an educational framework that emphasizes the alignment of learning outcomes, or what you call the learning objectives, assessment, and teaching methods. Teaching methods are what you call the learning activities. So, the idea is to design learning experiences that are aligned with the ILO. ILO stands for Intended Learning Outcomes, and that supports students in achieving those outcomes. So what is learning outcomes? Learning outcomes are specific statements that describe what students should know, understand, and be able to do after completing such a course or a lesson. So, learning outcomes should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So, again, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So it is what you call SMART. Remember? SMART. So, like for example, student will able to identify and explain key concept in biology. So just like that, very specific and very simple. Okay? So now let's move to assessment. Assessment refers to the process of evaluating student learning and performance. So what is assessment? So example for assessment is tests, quizzes, essays, projects, presentations, and observations. So what is the purpose of assessment? So it is to provide feedback to students and instructors. So how to know effective assessment? Effective assessment is aligned with learning outcomes, reliable, valid, and fair. And lastly, learning activities, or what you call the teaching methods. These are the tasks or exercises that students engage in acquire new knowledge, skills, or understanding. They can take many forms, so such as lectures, discussions, readings, assignments, projects, simulations, and experiments. So, learning activities should be designed to support the intended learning outcomes, still supporting to the intended learning outcomes, and engage students in active and meaningful learning. Okay, let's try. For example, on constructive alignment. Alright, the topic is about a course on writing. So remember that learning outcomes is SMART, right? SMART. So, again, SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So again, so it is what you call SMART. Remember. Alright, so for the learning outcomes on a course in writing, it must be clear, concise, prose, use correct grammar and punctuation, and engage audience. So, what about the assessment? You can include essays or other written assignments that are evaluated based on those criteria. And what about the teaching methods or the learning activities? So you might include workshops, peer review, or revision exercises. So again, let us all remember that constructive alignment can help student learning outcomes, enhance teaching effectiveness, and promote student engagement and motivation.
Understanding by Design, or UBD, helps students apply what they learn in a course to the real world, which deepens and enriches the learning experience. UBD is based on the principle of backward design and its 3 stages. The first stage is where instructor identify desired result, or in the other word, what skills should student master. The second stage is for determining acceptable evidence, or what are some indicators that show students have achieved desired results. The final stage is for planning learning experience, or what activities will help students master the specific skills identified.
Alright, so the instructional cycle, it is a process, is defined structure that promotes collaboration and collective responsibility with a teacher team by setting up structures for short-term cycles of improvement. Alright, so here is the instructional cycle. So, since we are preparing to be a teacher, we should always remember that in order to become an effective teacher, the first thing to do when you are teaching is you have to identify your learning outcomes or objectives of your lesson. And then, teaching learning which always begins with a pre-instructional assessment or pre-test. And then, teaching process which includes the teaching learning activities, or you can give them the group activities, drama, singing, or anything that can make them fun. Okay? And then formative assessment will be followed. And then you have to reteach them if necessary. And after that, you give them a summative assessment. So in the summative assessment, you have to summarize what you have discussed, and then you give them a quiz or a long quiz or a test, like post-test, like that. That is an example of a summative assessment. In order to know your student if they really learn your discussion, or to measure their knowledge. Okay?